Okay, fifth grade. Today we're going to go ahead and we're going to be starting our instruments, and you're going to notice that some of you have two prints. One is going to be your entire instrument with all of your pieces touching, and the second and possibly the third, depending on how many pieces you have, will be on a separate piece. This one, the one where it's a full instrument, everything touching and everything in the right place, we're going to be gluing our pieces onto this one. And the sheet where the pieces are separated, those are going to be our stencils for cutting. So for right now, we can move our full instrument off to the side. And you're going to notice that all of our shapes have numbers. Please go in number order, otherwise the project's going to be really hard to do because some of your shapes need to go on top of other shapes. So I'm going to find my shape 1, Jalen's going to find her shape 1, and you're just going to cut it out with scissors. My biggest tip when cutting these shapes out is to cut on the outside of the line. If you start cutting on the inside of the line, when we go to put this puzzle back together, your puzzle pieces are going to be too small. So make sure that you're cutting on the outside of the line so that way we can see it after you're done cutting. Okay, once your shape number 1 is done, some of you are going to have nothing on top of your shape, and some of you are going to have other shapes on top. This means that my shape 2, 3, and my black extras, if I want to use them, they will be going on top of my shape 1. So that's why I'm not cutting them out yet. Jalen doesn't have any shapes on top of hers. So that's why it's nice to have two examples. Some of you are going to have very simple ones. Some of you chose to do a drawing that has more shapes on top of shapes. So that's the one that I'll be doing. So if you have one like this, you'll be watching me. If you have one like Jalen, you'll be watching her. So right now I'm just focused on my shape 1. Jalen's just focused on her shape 1. You'll go to the front of the class where we have our bucket of painted paper, and you're just going to choose one of the colors for that shape. What color paper do you want for that shape? So I chose this one, and Jalen chose this one. And what you're going to be doing is taking your shape, and you're going to find a spot on the paper that you want your shape to be. So find a spot that you really like. You're going to take your pencil, you're going to hold your shape down, and you're going to trace your stencil on top. Please make sure that you can see the numbers and that your piece is not flipped backwards. So make sure it's up on the top, and with the pencil trace around it slowly. Once you have it traced, we are going to cut your shape out. Again, this is a pretty simple project. Just make sure you're not going too fast. If you are cutting your shapes too fast and you make a mistake, you're going to have to recut it, glue it, or tape it back together. Just like I did when I cut out my original shape, I want to cut on the outside of my pencil line. Now that you have shape number 1 cut out, we can go ahead and bring our full instrument back, because we will be gluing that shape on top of our shape 1. And don't worry if you cover up your 2, 3, 4, because we have it right here. So Jalen's gonna be going right here. I'm gonna be going right here. This paper is pretty thick and pretty heavy, so you're going to want to use a good amount of glue. Remember, between you and your partner, you can share a cup of glue. Everybody doesn't need their own. And our glue brushes they're soaking in water right now. So when you need a brush, you're gonna want to go ahead and just get some of this water off, and then you can wipe the rest of it off on your cardboard at your table. Some of the kids are just pulling it straight out and they're soaking wet with water, and then we're adding water to our glue and we're trying to glue paper down that is mostly water. So please make sure that you are wiping your brush until it is pretty dry before you start gluing. Once you have your shape placed down, we've noticed that when rubbing our hands across this, because it's tempera paint, it'll smear everywhere. So I've been using just a regular sheet of paper, or I'm just gonna go ahead and use my other piece, and I'm going to use that as a buffer. So now I can rub and make sure my shape is staying down nice and tight, and I don't have to worry about that paint smearing everywhere. Some of you have really easy instruments, like Jalen's is pretty simple. All the shapes are separate, none of them are on top of each other. So she's just going to keep working. She's going to cut out number 2, and she's going to probably be changing paper now, because this part of her instrument is the same as this. She's probably going to use the same purple. But when she does the inside, she doesn't want to use the same paper because they're right next to each other. Just like her shape number 3, she's probably not going to want to use these purples next to it, or you won't be able to see them in her mouthpiece. So she's kind of alternating. She's doing purples and then not purples, and then purples, not purples, purples, not purples. If you are somebody that has lots of patterns while Jalen's working, I'm going to be explaining how to do this one. So my next puzzle piece is number 2. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut it out, and please make sure that you're not bubble cutting these, and you're going to see why in 1 second. So here's my shape number 2, and I can't see where my shape number 2 is supposed to go because I covered it up. But that's why I wanted you to work with me at least through the first 3 or 4 shapes. This fits on top of my shape 1 that I've already cut. And because I line cut my shape instead of bubble cutting, I can take my pencil and I can trace where my shape number 2 needs to go after I glue it. So now I know where shape number 2 is supposed to go. But I'm not going to glue down this gray piece that says number 2. I'm going to pick another sheet of painted paper. But just like Jalen's, I don't want to use the same color on top of the same color. So for this shape, I'm going to use a different pattern. So just like you did with shape 1, make sure that you can see the number 2 in the gray. We don't want to see the white. You'll trace with a pencil. Don't throw any of your shapes away. I would just keep a nice stack of them because you just don't know. You don't know if at some point you're going to need this shape, and we don't have any other ones. So once you lose it, you're gonna have to find a creative way of getting that shape back. So I'm going to keep that shape off to the side. I'll grab my scissors and I'm gonna cut out my shape number 2. Once your shape is cut out, you can go ahead and flip it over. We can put glue on and get it glued down. Make sure that you're gluing your shapes on the cardboard and not trying to glue them on your project, or you're gonna get glue all over your project. So make sure that you are applying the glue on the cardboard. Now that I'm done with shape 2, I'm gonna go ahead and move on to shape number 3. And again, keep watching the video even if you think you know what to do, just because we haven't talked about these black shapes yet. And if you have black shapes, I wanna at least have you watch the video until then. But if you have no black shapes, you'll keep working like Jalen is working. So my shape 3 is cut out. Again, I could probably eyeball it, but since we already have a stencil, we might as well use it. That way we know exactly where this is going to go. So I will put my stencil down and it should line up with shape 1 and shape 2. I'll go ahead and grab my pencil and trace it. Because my shape 2 and shape 3 share a common theme, I'm going to use the same paper I've been using. Always before you glue down, just double check and make sure that your shape is in the right direction and the right size and shape that you're looking for. So I'm done with all of my numbered shapes. I'm done with number 1, I'm done with number 2 and number 3. The blacks don't have a number, which means we're going to do them at the very, very end. We're gonna do those last, so don't throw this away. We're gonna go ahead and move that off to the side. And I'm going to go ahead and move on to number 4. Okay, once you have all of your shapes done, you can now recycle them. I don't need 4, 3, 5 anymore. I don't need number 2 anymore. But I do need my number 1 and my number 6 because those have the added details that you drew for your instrument. So I'm going to go ahead and use those. They don't have any numbers, and we don't need to use any of the painted paper. We're just going to cut out the black shapes and glue them down by using our stencils to find out where they are. With the gray shapes, I'm going to set my stencil down. I'm going to trace so I know exactly where that piece is going to go. And I can glue it. If you get your instrument done and there's still time left in class, the last thing that we need to do is we need to get it off of this white background. So you're just going to cut out your entire instrument one last time. If you have an instrument that has strings, I know in the beginning of the project we talked about using maybe oil pastel or a crayon to draw them in, but when you're completely done with the entire project, we'll get out some yarn and we'll have you just cut out some yarn and glue it down for our strings of your musical instrument. Okay, 5th grade, if you have an instrument that has some pieces that you can't get to with your scissors, what you'll do is you can either go ahead and poke through with a pencil, or you can fold it and just cut it. That way you have an opening to get your scissors into to go ahead and cut it out. Going to be gluing these down onto our brick patterns that we made a few weeks ago, and we're also going to be adding our colorful organic shapes, and you can go ahead and start doing that by watching the next video.